remember the flood disaster that happened to the East Coast last December. I mean, how can we forget? Many were killed and thousands lost their only homes. Most are still homeless to this day. Now, what if I told you that it could have been worse if it was an urban area? Say the same amount of rainfall here in Klang Valley would have doubled the flood risk than what we saw in Kelantan. And you know why? It's because there's more vegetation in rural areas, and vegetation is able to absorb the rainfall. That will reduce excess flood water and lower the flood levels. Sounds good, doesn't it? Now, before you go and put up a lot of trees around your house, you should start asking yourself, if the solution was that easy, why was I given a research fund to study this? Because unfortunately, it is not that simple. On the ground, vegetation becomes resistant to the flow. So, if this building is surrounded by thick forest, the floodwater will be contained and spill into this hall. It's because the floodwater cannot escape as easily as when there is no vegetation to slow it down. So how can you tell how much vegetation and where they are placed to make sure that the flood risk is low? Now this is where my research comes in. I'm using the cost-effective remote sensing technology to measure vegetation density. Based on this vegetation density, I'll be able to calculate vegetation resistance factors. These resistance factors can then be input in a flood model so that the model can simulate the flood impacts based on different characteristics of vegetation. That way, I can show you that having a certain amount of vegetation along this building can protect us from getting wet, but at the same time, doesn't make flooding worse for our neighbors. Now, I am proposing this method to land use planners and the Department of Drainage and Irrigation Malaysia so that they can plan for future developments with lowest flood risk at minimum cost. So could vegetation help save the East Coast from flooding? Maybe not completely, but it could have reduced the flood damage. And if we could save 100 families from losing their homes, that is definitely worth any research fund. Thank you.